Imagine receiving a terrifying 911 call in the middle of the night where a young woman whispers in panic, "I'm being held hostage. He's trying to kill me." Within minutes, police rush to a quiet suburban street in Harper Woods just outside Detroit, expecting a domestic disturbance, but what they find instead looks like the aftermath of a nightmare. A woman staggers into a neighbor's house with a knife still buried in her back, collapsing on the floor while gasping that her own son has stabbed everyone inside the house. Officers scramble to figure out where the attack is happening because the victim is too injured to even tell them which house she escaped from. As they search the street, they suddenly spot blood smeared across the door of a nearby greenhouse, and at that same moment, smoke begins pouring from inside the building. Then the chaos escalates even further. A fire ignites in the kitchen. A baby suddenly appears, crawling out of the backyard alone. Police rush forward and shout, "Grab that baby," while flames grow inside the home and gunshots suddenly explode through the windows toward the officers outside. The entire neighborhood becomes a war zone as police take cover, unsure how many victims are inside, whether hostages are still trapped, or who is firing the gun from within the burning house. For hours, the tense standoff continues while smoke billows into the sky. Firefighters wait helplessly because of the gunfire, and officers surround the house wondering if anyone inside is still alive. But what investigators will soon discover is even more disturbing because the violent events unfolding that day were not random at all. In fact, this horrific triple murder had begun weeks earlier with a mysterious late-night scream, a suspicious car with its trunk open, and a young woman desperately running through the darkness begging for help before a gunshot echoed across a Detroit neighborhood. The story begins in the early morning hours of June 4, 2022. When a man who wished to remain anonymous looked out from the second floor of his home on Lenox Street and noticed a white four-door sedan parked outside with its trunk wide open. Moments later, he heard a woman screaming, "Help me," as she ran down the street, followed by the unmistakable sound of a gunshot that suddenly silenced everything. Frightened but determined to document what he was witnessing, the man quietly recorded a video on his phone showing the strange car sitting outside, with both the trunk and driver's door open. In the distance, he could hear movement in a vacant lot, nearby twigs snapping and rustling sounds as if someone were dragging something through the brush. Then, moments later, a man ran back to the car, slammed the trunk shut, and sped away into the night. Convinced he had just witnessed part of a murder, the caller dialed 911 and reported everything, explaining that a woman had been screaming for help and that he had captured video of the suspicious vehicle. But shockingly, that night police never arrived to investigate. The next afternoon, still haunted by what he had heard, the witness decided to check the vacant lot himself, and what he found confirmed his worst fears. Hidden among the weeds and trash lay the lifeless body of a young woman who had clearly been dragged into the brush. Police finally arrived and began examining the grim scene. The victim was partially clothed and carried no identification, but an autopsy later confirmed she was 24-year-old Natala Morris, known to friends as Sparkles. Although a gunshot had been heard during the attack, the autopsy revealed something even more brutal. Natala had actually been beaten to death, suffering severe blunt force trauma across her body. For her family, the news was devastating and incomprehensible. Natala was described as kind, hardworking, and devoted to her younger siblings. In fact, she had been planning to attend her sister's graduation the very next day, leaving her family heartbroken that they had to walk across the stage, knowing their sister had been murdered only hours earlier. Detectives soon discovered another strange twist in the case. Natala's white Ford Focus, the same type of vehicle seen in the witness video, had been found burning later that same night in another part of Detroit. After firefighters extinguished the flames, investigators recovered a backpack from the back seat containing Natala's bank cards, personal items, and her cell phone. Using cell phone data and surveillance cameras from nearby streets, detectives began reconstructing her final movements, tracing the car's route across the city during the hours before her death. The digital trail eventually led investigators to a man named Jonathan Lamont Welch, a 23-year-old with a troubling history of violence. Just 2 days before Natala was killed, Jonathan's girlfriend and the mother of his baby boy, Zella Frazier, had reported a horrifying assault. According to her statement, she woke up to Jonathan dragging her down the stairs while a disturbing collection of weapons had been laid out on the floor, including a gasoline can, extension cords, garden shears, a drill, and even a circular saw. Zella managed to escape and call police, but Jonathan fled before officers arrived. Despite the seriousness of the attack, he was eventually arrested but released on bond while investigators waited for DNA results. That decision would soon prove catastrophic. Weeks later, on July 10th, Zella returned to Jonathan's parents' home with their young child, despite having a restraining order, hoping to resolve tensions within the family. Instead, she would soon dial 911 in terror, whispering that she was being held hostage inside the house and that Jonathan was trying to kill her. Moments later, the call ended with screams. What followed was the chaotic scene that officers encountered when they arrived. Jonathan had stabbed his own mother, Flossie Bray, who barely managed to escape next door with a knife still lodged in her back before collapsing. Inside the house, Jonathan brutally murdered Zella and his stepfather, Robert Bray, striking them repeatedly with a hammer and stabbing them as the home filled with smoke from a deliberately set fire. During the standoff, he even fired his mother's handgun at responding police officers before eventually crawling out of the house wearing only boxer shorts and surrendering. When investigators searched the burned home, they found overwhelming evidence tying Jonathan to the killings, including his DNA on the hammer, the knife, the gun, and multiple other weapons. Days later, forensic testing also confirmed that Jonathan's DNA matched evidence found in Natala Morris's car and on her body, connecting him to her murder as well. In the end, Jonathan Welch was charged with 4 murders, including Natala Morris, Zella Frazier, Flossie Bray, and Robert Bray. In November 2023, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 45 to 70 years in prison, bringing a tragic close to one of Detroit's most disturbing crime stories, one that left multiple families shattered and raised a haunting question that still lingers today. Could these lives have been saved if the warning signs had been taken seriously sooner?